Welcome home, my boy.
Oh yeah, and I was completely wrong about my Gerald theory. He was indeed Gerald Robotnik. Was. Welcome back, one and all. This is Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Spoiler edition. This video contains spoilers for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. If you haven't seen it or you haven't seen my initial review, go watch the movie, watch my review, and come back here. You've been warned. Now go on, get. Oh, you're still here. Either you've already seen the movie, you just don't care about spoilers, or you really like me. Either way, here we go. First off, allow me to fangasm before getting into more intricate plot discussion. Dear God, Jeff, marry me! The Sonic Cinematic Universe made for the fans. Cinema, I say, the fans, cinema, I tell ya, with a brilliant Batman. Nay, I say, it's a franchise for fans. Nay, I say, anyone who enjoys excellent art. Sonic all over this beautiful man. Prison Island, the Chow Garden, the Eclipse Cannon. Not the Space Colony arc. All right, let's get that crushing blow out of the way. Shadow, he's got a gun. He's got a gun, man. Super Shadow and Sonic the Boom Bam Zow. The Gun Hunters, the new suit, that ending. Sonic 4 about to be my Empire Strikes Back, baby. Ahem. Thank you for indulging in my obligatory fangasm. On to a more coherent review and discussion. Firstly, let's all take a moment to appreciate just how far we've come. From that very first trailer with Ugly Sonic in a car, to now Super Sonic and Super Shadow battling across continents. Truly, there's nowhere to go but up. Literally. In movie 3, we've got a taste of what it could be like if we took the characters to space. Who knows where else their adventures will take them? We can discuss that later. Moving right along, allow me to get a little bit more in-depth with this iteration of Shadow. As previously mentioned, the Space Colony arc didn't factor into this movie, therefore, he wasn't made there. In the movie, he landed on Earth back in the 70s and was uncovered and studied by Gunn, under Gerald Robotnik's watchful supervision. After further inspection, they found Shadow radiated unlimited levels of power and speed, thusly dubbing him the ultimate life form. But he was also thought to be a dangerous specimen who belonged in containment, when he's so much more than that. Initially, he was more mistrusting, scared, and confused, until he met Maria. I won't pretend to have an encyclopedic knowledge of every Sonic character, but what I do know about Maria from the games is that she had a love for life and nature and suffered from a terminal illness. Shadow was created and studied for a possible cure, but they really don't hint at Maria being some sick child during the film, in any way. Shadow's essentially a lab rat and Maria's a curious, friendly girl who wanted to play with him. And damn it, I love her. Without her talking much, you know what kind of person she is just by looking at her. She's mischievous, curious, lively, and that kind of rubs off on Shadow. When being studied and tested on, he'd always have his head down, barely able to make eye contact with anyone in the room. But when hanging out with Maria, he sparks up instantly, and it's the cutest thing ever. Every scene with them together is pure wholesomeness. When they're sitting out under the stars, he talks with Maria about how uneasy he feels around the scientists, how they all look at him and talk about him like he's some sort of monster. Yet Maria, and I guess by extension Gerald, were the only ones willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, and treat him with the respect and love he had been missing. And dear God, when he turns to her and says, "I don't know what I'd do without you," I'll admit, it got to me. And it just made her inevitable death hurt all the more. It's not one for one what happened in the game, but still, it left an impact. In fact, later on in the movie, he punches out someone who he thinks is Commander Walters, but it was actually Tom using a hologram disguise. Right then and there, you see a bit of remorse in his eyes, especially when Sonic happens to find them and is desperately trying to wake up Tom. You can see the realization kicking in to the point where he can't even speak until Sonic speaks to him. Shadow isn't a stone-cold death machine. The scientists way back when certainly made him feel that way, yet Maria loved him regardless. I will admit though that this retelling of Shadow's origins raises a lot of questions. Questions that could be answered in future films, perhaps? If anyone could pull it off in a film, it'd definitely be Jeff, knowing his history. But on the topic of feels, I didn't expect this movie to get me to feel for Robotnik. Where's the guy now? Bumming it in his mobile crab home, watching telenovelas and gaining weight. In his mind, there's no way he should have lost. His technology and genius were beyond compare, yet somehow he was thwarted twice by extraterrestrial cereal mascots. Of course, he'd been a tad depressed. That is until, of course, he finds out someone's hacked his drones. In order to find out who, he and Stone team up with Team Sonic, well, on the condition he gets his fix from one of Sonic's quills. It's tradition at this point. Alright, now that quill, remember that quill for later. They all arrive via ring portal to the abandoned lab and split off into teams to investigate the facility, with Sonic volunteering to go with Robotnik. Upon searching remnants of a bedroom, Sonic inquires about Robotnik's family. Robotnik says he's been alone for so long that he simply doesn't care anymore and that he's better off alone. Now to that you may say, but he's got Stone! Well, elsewhere, paired off with Tails, Stone asks him what it's like being Sonic's assistant. Tails then corrects him in saying that he's Sonic's best friend and that they work together as a team, assuming Stone and Robotnik operate the same way. And Stone sheepishly replies with that, yeah, we're totally just like you guys. Obviously a little jealous, as Robotnik's only ever treated him as nothing more than his lackey, yet he hasn't abandoned him. Why? Well, while you're pondering that, Robotnik comes across a pile of his drones, as well as a much older, fatter version of himself. This is, of course, Gerald Robotnik, who in the game was dead by this point, but hey, this isn't the game. It's here where we see something change in Robotnik, and we see a whole new side of him. For all his talk about how important his tech is to him, and how family meant nothing, it was oddly heartwarming seeing him excited about having a long-lost grandfather. And it'd be a no-brainer that Gerald is just being played by Jim Carrey again, with more prosthetics. And unshockingly, Jim Carrey plays very well off of Jim Carrey. A little too well if you ask me. We get so many scenes dedicated to just the Robotniks that it ceases being a Sonic film and becomes another Jim Carrey classic. And I mean that in the best possible way. In every role, whether it's the Grinch or Ace Ventura, he gives the role 110%. Hamming it up, throwing his entire body into it, he melts into whatever role he's playing. And it's no different in the Sonic movie. That's why he's the best of the best. After the release of Sonic 2, there was a worry that Jim might retire and not come back to do a third. And the film crew vowed he wouldn't be replaced should he have chose retirement. But he said if a good enough script was delivered, written in gold, he'd consider returning. Consider this the good future, everyone. And Jim Carrey contributed a ton more here than he did with the other movies. He had a say in how Gerald's makeup would be done. That laser light show dance-off was his idea. I'm sure the song choice was even his. He's a comedic dynamo that can't be stopped. And believe me when I say a millennial Jim Carrey playing off a boomer Jim Carrey is way funnier than you'd think. Ivo will make a modern reference or quip, like he'll say Robotnik has entered the chat, where he'll make a joke about trauma dumping, or reference Green Lantern from 2011. And Gerald will either not respond or not get what he's referencing and have his own outdated thoughts like, why is there a woman in the military? But that crotchety old man mentality may have been Gerald's undoing. Much like Shadow, losing Maria made him go off the deep end as well. After being jailed for years, he earned his freedom when he gave up his blueprints to Gunn for the Eclipse cannon. And just no one at Gunn Corporate stopped to think to themselves, this vengeful, angry old man might double-cross us and take the cannon for himself to do God knows what with the Earth. Spoiler alert, he tries to do exactly that. And when he finally does have the machine and has Shadow power it up, only then does he reveal his true intentions to Ivo, essentially using the cannon to vaporize Earth, not really caring if he's vaporized in the process. Having somewhat rational thought left, the rose-tinted glasses come off of Ivo, and he tries to reason with his grandfather, saying they'd be better off teaming up, ruling over humanity, while Gerald tries to argue his point that humanity isn't worth ruling over and it's best to blow them all to kingdom come, that there's nothing on Earth or in life worth fighting for. Then Ivo's all, what about family? Then Gerald coldly rejects him, saying, you're no Maria. Ouch! That's 2 for 2, man. I'm here feeling sad for Robotnik. While Sonic and Shadow are trying to stop the cannon from outside, Ivo and Gerald are having their own showdown inside. And yes, being Jim Carrey fighting Jim Carrey, it's as funny as you'd think. Ivo eventually gains the upper hand, and an assist from Tails and Knuckles, and shocks Gerald in the butt, sending him flying into Shadow's residual energy field. Ego. While they're able to divert the firing sequence away from the planet and, the core overloads, and the explosion of the Eclipse cannon will still affect the Earth. So Robotnik would try to keep the core stable as Shadow pushes the entire thing away from the Earth before it does explode. But before the big boom, Ivo sends one last transmission to Earth, dedicating his sacrifice to Agent Stone, finally realizing that he was the only one who truly cared for him. In his words, more than a sycophant, a friend. And with that final message, the cannon blows up. Or perhaps implodes, it's hard to tell. But yeah, as sad as it would be to see him go, if Jim Carrey decided to retire after this, I'd say he took Robotnik out on a high note. He lived long enough as the villain and died a hero. A broken man who thought he found everything he had ever wanted in Gerald, when what he really needed was right there under his mustache, with a latte with steamed Austrian goat milk at the ready. With one final goodbye to the doctor, Stone heads off. It was bittersweet, yet rather beautiful. And speaking of interesting character development, knock, it's Knuckles! Movie Knuckles has easily become my favorite iteration of the character. He's still our big, red, lovable, meat-headed fish out of water and brute strength of Team Sonic. Who got all the best lines, might I add. I mean, Sonic's kinda sorta suffering from the Deadpool syndrome, where most of his lines are just quips, at least during the first act of the movie. And I don't think Tails is utilized enough. But Knuckles truly got his due here. Team Knuckles all the way, baby. Especially after being snubbed in his own TV show. Alright, that's the last insult I'll ever waste on the Knuckles show. Wanda still sucks and I hate her.
Okay, that was the last one.
It's really sweet seeing him still trying to adjust to being part of a family, as well as a team, even if he does get a tad annoyed at the idea of Sonic being de facto leader. With that being said, he gets a pretty interesting moment to shine. For context, after the encounter with Shadow and the Robotniks, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles make their way back to Green Hills to enlist Tom and Maddie's help with a break-in mission to Gun Headquarters. Maddie suggests they use the Master Emerald to speedrun it, and Knuckles immediately shuts her down, saying it's too much power for this heist and it's best that it stays hidden. The heist ends up being a bust, Tom gets injured, and Maddie goes away with him to the infirmary. Sonic's emotions are running high and he wants to take his rage out on Shadow. Tails and Knuckles try and fail to calm him down. Then he demands to know where the Master Emerald is. Knuckles sees that he's angry and refuses to tell him. They keep going back and forth until it looks like they might start fighting, but Knuckles is the first one to back down. He agrees to tell Sonic where it is because he's bound to the promise they made to trust one another, even if it looked like Sonic was going rogue. Our little red wrecking ball is growing up. Near the movie's end, the gang's back together and Sonic gives out apologies. Knuckles looks as if he might hold this grudge over Sonic, but instead he extends a bro fist, just happy that Sonic's okay. And they all embrace in a brotherly group hug. The feels, man, the feels. I'll go on record here and say I've laughed as many times as I've gotten emotional at this movie. It's an odd balance for sure, but somehow they made it work. Moving along from character development and feels, I need to talk about the other human characters in the movie. I mean, besides the Robotniks and Stone. Now, over the course of the Sonic movie franchise, the human characters have always had an interesting reception from the audience. Some people find them as welcome additions, while most feel they're unnecessary and drag the movies down. I believe these negative feelings stem from the perception that most people have based off the family film adaptations of the past. Namely, the live-action CGI ones, where the live-action celebrity actors that should be the co-stars end up taking center stage, while the characters the people came to see wind up being the co-stars. Think the Smurfs. Think Transformers. Think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Most people would assume this is just what the Sonic franchise would be, especially after the first movie. It was a fish out of water, road trip buddy film. And while it's by no means bad, it's just not what you want out of a Sonic movie. But I'll go against the grain here and say that the human characters in that first movie had some of the best moments. Don't y'all look at me that way. These movies are indeed intended to be epic action comedies, while the human characters do help anchor it with a lot of heart. Like, Tom and Maddie's relationship with Sonic will never not make me smile, dude. Especially Tom, with his warm, fatherly wisdom, his somewhat sarcastic sense of humor, and his selflessness, his willingness to help others, directly inspired Sonic to be a hero. Well, he and Maddie are back in movie 3, and of course they're as fun as always. They throw Sonic a party to celebrate the day he arrived on Earth years ago. And later on there's a great foreshadowing moment where they happen to find Sonic's old hideout from the first movie, and Tom commends Sonic on remaining upbeat and hopeful all his life, in spite of everything he's lost, his original home planet and Longclaw. Then Tom and Maddie are kinda sidelined for a bit while Team Sonic heads into adventure, which is the exact thing you do want in these Sonic movies. adventure. In their downtime, they've partaken in several hobbies while their adopted brood is out saving the world, including baking, painting, knitting, and even Tom's taken up puppetry. Of course, later on they aid Sonic in breaking into Gun headquarters, but to help do so, Tails gives them hologram devices to help disguise themselves. They take the form of Randall and Rachel and hilariously work their way past the guards. What an inventive way to get them back in the movie without having them back in the movie. This should be the standard going forward, involving the human characters in the main story. No derailing subplots. They're all here and they're part of the action. Even Wade, the bumbling butt of the joke cop, is made relevant to the story, with continuity from the Knuckles series intact. Knuckles appointed him as the new guardian of the Master Emerald, and in typical Wade fashion, he's using it as a hockey puck. Then when Sonic arrives for the Emerald, Wade goes into this whole spiel about how he's been trusted to guard the Emerald with his life. Sonic immediately snatches it from him and he's all, "Well, I tried." Like, that was funny. I enjoyed Wade's appearance. He came in, said a funny, and then the action picked right back up. Learn from this movie. As long as Wade or any of the other human characters don't bring the story to a standstill or take away focus from Sonic and the gang, and of course, if they did something funny, I'll always be happy to see him. Yet I don't think that could be said for Kristen Ritter's character, Director Rockwell. She's not annoying, nor does she halt the story in any way. She's the one who comes and recruits Team Sonic to take down Shadow, but then she's given an arc that really goes nowhere. During Sonic's meetup with Commander Walters in the Chow Garden, they're ambushed by the hijacked egg drones, with Walters dying in the chaos. Rockwell arrives on the scene after the fact and reveals she never fully trusted them? She only sought out their help because of Walters? This plot point never comes back into play. Yeah, she thwarts Sonic's break into Gun, saying to his face that she never trusted him, but she also stopped the Robotniks. No brainer, they're the bad guys. Where are her morals? What was the point of any of that? I have no idea. And then she just leaves the movie entirely after seeing Commander Walters again, who's actually just Tom in disguise, but still. It's like, why was she here at all? They could have just as easily sent Walters to get Team Sonic, or the female director from the previous movie. And let me say, I feel really bad for that actress being replaced like this, unless she was still in the movie and I just didn't notice, I don't know. Bottom line, why was Rockwell even here? Her character did kind of remind me of Agent Topaz from the Sonic X anime though. Wait. Was she included because they're setting up... Back on Tom, many theorize that he might end up dying in movie 3, and that his death would serve as a means for Sonic to feel the pain Shadow felt after losing Maria. And after a pretty humorous scene where they're all apprehended by gun agents over a gravity-fluctuating floor, it looked very well like they might die. The floors begin to suck down these sharp metal pipes dangerously close to where Tom and Maddie are trapped. I was legitimately worried. Sonic thankfully gets to them in the nick of time, but I'll admit, I was on the edge of my seat there. And according to a recent interview with Pat Casey and Josh Miller, the writers, they almost went that route. This could have been the last we ever saw of the Donut Lord. Tom does have a near-death experience at the hand of Shadow, however, which does sideline him and Maddie for another lengthy bit of the film. He pulls through in the end, thank God, but the idea that killing Tom was even considered at one point really shows how far the writers were willing to go to make this the darkest in the film series. But let's stop talking about that and discuss something lighter, the Easter eggs. Let's all take a moment to appreciate how well the Easter eggs from the games have been worked into the film series thus far. Nothing sticks out in my mind as being too flashy or obnoxious. They've all been either fun little nods or plot-relevant locations and items. Like, what about the classic stage clear theme playing during Team Sonic's race? Or even after the race, when Sonic finds Knuckles and Tails ahead of him and doing the iconic idle foot tap. Or again, Shadow being on a motorbike wielding a gun. Not the gun, but a gun. Or Team Sonic meeting up with Walters at the Chow Garden restaurant. Also, extra points for having them play I Want You Back during the stage show. Yeah, it was a Japanese version, but hey, it's something. Michael Jackson is eternally linked to Sonic. That's just a fact. Or in one of Shadow's flashbacks, he and Maria are watching a Godzilla-style monster movie starring the Bio-Lizard. When the team is back with Tom and Maddie and they're plotting the gun heist, Tails brings up a hologram of the compound, and with it, a character select screen in the style of the original Sonic 3 game. And here's one that completely flew over my head. Before Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles free fall out of the gun helicopter, Sonic goes, Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies? We're out of here. A direct line from Sonic Adventure 2 before the city escape level. Those are all my favorite Easter eggs anyway. If I missed any or didn't mention your favorite, let me know in the comments. Would Live and Learn playing during the team-up count? While I ponder that, we must discuss that scene. I'd like to think we all knew it was going to happen. From either fan intuition or toys spoiling the movie, I think we all knew we'd get Super Sonic and Super Shadow at some point during the climax. But even so, knowing that it was coming didn't make it any less exciting. After Sonic gets the emerald from Wade, he goes super and barrels towards the Eclipse Cannon with a vengeance. He nabs Shadow and they crash land in a remote location on Earth, and thank God for that. If they landed in a populated area, people would have died. Shadow then knocks the Chaos Emeralds out of Sonic, Knuckles style. They both dive in for the emeralds. Both go super and battle it out across the globe. They're throwing each other into mountains, causing volcanic eruptions. Sonic punches Shadow across the ocean into different territories. Shadow gets punched to the moon. Like, I thought we were watching a Sonic film. When did this become Dragon Ball? Paramount makes certain that the animators and VFX artists were rewarded a thick bonus for this masterwork. Then, the team up. They have a heart-to-heart about their loss, lock hands, sharing the power of the emeralds, then head back towards the cannon to confront a horde of gun hunters. If any one of you watched this with a straight face, please see a doctor. This entire scene was fan service on steroids. Appropriately ending with Sonic and Shadow, and Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik from the inside, diverting the cannon's laser away from the Earth and accidentally severing the moon? They pissed on the moon! How can they ever hope to top this experience? Well, let's discuss. With the Eclipse Cannon gone, the world saved, Tom healing up, and the family whole again, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles engage in another race across the forest, and they joyously motor off into the sunset. Another happy ending. Or is it? In typical Sonic fashion, he overdoes it on the speed and ends up in New York. Classic Sonic. As he tries to map his way back home, he's being stalked by a robotic version of himself. Where did he come from? Why is he here? Well, to ice Sonic, obviously. Sonic's able to dodge the initial attack until he finds he's surrounded by an army of metal Sonics. That's not even the best part. They all lunge at him, ready to attack, when from out of the dark comes an awesome sound, shouting cowabunga as they hit the ground. Wrong movie, sorry. They all lunge into attack when out of nowhere, a Pico hammer flies into each bot, destroying them instantly. Sonic's completely taken aback by the whole ordeal, as his sudden hammer-wielding hero stands before him, revealed to be a pink female hedgehog! Look, whether you're a diehard or casual Sonic fan, you cannot tell me you weren't screaming your head off like a banshee after this huge reveal. An army of metal Sonics. A vigilante Amy Rose! I tell ya, every after-credits stinger in these movies just go bigger and better. The only difference here being, this wasn't the only post-credit scene. Way after the credits have ended, we happen upon a crash site, where a lone inhibitor ring lies in a crater, presumably amongst the fallen debris from the destroyed Eclipse Cannon. Shadow, alive and well, steps into frame, picks up the ring, and that's where the big reveals end until the next film. Right there, in less than a minute, they prove there are bigger and better things to come for this franchise. Metal Sonic and Amy Rose in one go? Possibly Shadow battling amnesia? Like the game? Whatever the case, the sky's the limit. As many of you may already know, Paramount's already confirmed Sonic 4 being in development, eyeing a release in spring 2027? Well, I guess they would need an extended period of time to come up with something really great, especially if they hope to top Super Sonic and Shadow. And that one post-credit scene opens up a world of possibilities, like Metal Sonic for one. In the games, he was created by Robotnik as Sonic's perfect double, an android able to mimic his every move and anticipate his attacks. Equipped with a jet engine and the ability to scan and replicate another being's life data, he just may be the Mad Doctor's greatest invention yet. But what does that mean about Robotnik? Well, I have a theory. Suppose the Eclipse Cannon implosion didn't kill Robotnik, but instead transported him to Sonic's homeworld through the residual chaos energy left from Shadow. I mean, they wouldn't emphasize the term chaos energy for nothing. They're setting up more lore right there. But yeah, back to my point. Teleportation via chaos energy. Like in Sonic X, when the Chaos Emeralds teleported everyone to Earth. Like the energy signature or something. Teleported the entire thing to Mobius. And Ivo took over. Then with the quill he had, he built the army of Metal Sonics and sent him to Earth to tie up loose ends. I.e., kill the real Sonic. This very well may not be the last we hear of Jim Carrey in this franchise. And as I'm recording this, I've just read that Jim Carrey's not closing the door on Sonic, or retiring as a whole. He's simply taking a break until something worth his while comes along. What a legend. But what about Amy Rose, who coincidentally was introduced in the same game as Metal, Sonic CD? Just think about it. A loose adaptation of Sonic CD in movie form? Do you know what that means?
Time travel!
Little Planet? The Time Gems? You know what? I take it back. They can take all the time they need. Back on Amy. First things first. Isn't she so cute? Look at her little snarky eyebrow raise. I'm not gonna post the image here because I don't want to get taken down, but if you know, you know, man. Anyways, in the games, Amy's an upbeat, caring girl with an erratic temper, a fascination for the mystic arts, and a not-so-secret crush on Sonic. In Sonic CD, he rescued her from Metal Sonic's clutches and escaped Robotnik's decaying base and back to Earth, and she's been infatuated with him ever since. She famously wears a red go-go dress with matching boots, and wields a Pico Pico hammer as her weapon of choice. No idea where she's keeping it, though. While I was elated to see her in the big movie stinger, I had to stop and wonder what this new lone wolf vigilante type getup was about. Jeff Fowler and the crew, they clearly got something new planned for her, but I'ma still speculate. Suppose this version of Amy comes from an apocalyptic future. Suppose the Eclipse Cannon implosion sent Robotnik to the future somehow, where he either ended up conquering Earth or Sonic's Earth. Metal comes from that future, and somehow Amy followed him to the present to save and recruit Sonic and his friends to help her save the future. Or does Robotnik end up on Little Planet, and he navigates it back to Earth? Or something? Perhaps we could see a time travel story? A return to Sonic's homeworld? Jeff, Mr. Fowler, if you're watching, I've got ideas too, man! Putting my excitement aside for what the fourth film could possibly bring, what would I ultimately like to see from the rest of the film series? How much further could they go? And when should they know enough's enough? Well, for one thing, should Jim Carrey ever commit to retiring while the series is still going, I'd love to see Agent Stone come into his own a little more. Perhaps he has a vendetta against Sonic and the gang after Robotnik sacrificed himself. So maybe he steps away from his neutral sidekick role and can go a little dark. Possibly as insane as Robotnik eventually became. His blind loyalty and infatuation to Robotnik knows no bounds, so who's to say he wouldn't follow his example? If you've ever read the Sonic 2 prequel comics, there's a story in there about Stone where he does just that. On some hard drive, he finds a manifesto left by Robotnik to help him take control of the weak-minded scum of America. And with that, he established a new base in a local coffee shop and turned the entire staff against each other to the point where every one of them wanted to quit. This proves Stone can be just as sinister as he can be a nurturing assistant, and I'm sure that's something we'd all love to see. I know I'm not alone here in saying that Agent Stone is the best new addition to come out of these Sonic movies. Give the people what they want, Sega. Make him canon to the games. Speaking of the games, I'm sure we'd all love to see the rest of Sonic's posse show up in the movies. Budgets be damned. And I'm sure everyone's got their wish lists. But for me, I'd specifically like to see Rouge the Bat, Cream the Rabbit, the Chaotix, if possible, Mighty and Ray, and Big the Cat. Heck, Pat and Josh said during several interviews that getting Rouge and Big specifically in the movies has been their mission from day one. Especially Big, with him being a background character more than anything, just casually fishing wherever he could, and frankly, that's all you need from Big. He's just a chill guy who loves fishing. As for Rouge the Bat, I feel like that's a must because, well, the film's rogues gallery is kinda lacking. While she's never been a full-on villain, she's always been a foil, especially for Knuckles. So for further expansion of the movie universe, her inclusion would help beef up the pretty lacking villains list. Again, not the textbook definition of a villain, but like, she's got her own intentions in mind. She wants the jewels, all the jewels, and nothing but the jewels. And suppose they give her that arc she had in Sonic X where she temporarily becomes a government spy. And hey, if you teamed her up with Agent Rockwell, then her inclusion in the third film wouldn't be so pointless. I'm just saying. And Gunn kinda has it out for Sonic and Co. So the material writes itself. Rouge, get her in there, please. On that note, what other series baddies could we bring in after Robotnik? Well, I think Shadow's retold origins in the third film sets up the possibility of introducing Black Doom to the movie universe. And from there, you could get into the nitty-gritty of where they all came from. Not just Shadow, but Sonic and the rest of the gang. With the emphasis on chaos energy in the third movie, they could eventually bring in Chaos, perhaps as their final Thanos-level villain. And hear me out on this one. If Fowler and the team were ever so bold, bring back Rava the Destroyer. Who's that, you ask? Back during the original film's development, Robotnik wasn't the main antagonist. They were instead going to introduce an original character called Rava the Destroyer, a tall humanoid lizard warrior who wanted to steal Sonic's power and take over the universe. Yeah, it only made sense to cut that from the original film story. If you're gonna do a Sonic movie, do what the people know. Not this. But with 3 movies under its belt at this point, an expanding roster of furry friends, and a pretty small rogues gallery, I don't think the fans would be as judgmental about it. They'd more likely welcome it at this point. They give him a small cameo in the prequel comics during Tails' story, where he resides in what looks like the Marble Zone. Possible foreshadowing for the future? I wouldn't mind seeing him pop up in the movies now. It said he has active powers over chaos energy, so perhaps he's the conduit that could bring chaos to the movie universe? It could work. I could go on and on here about what could be. Paramount, Jeff, Sega, please be taking notes if you're watching. There's gold in them thar hills. But let's get a little real here. This series can't, nor should it go on forever. There are only so many characters and ideas they could put in before people decided, I'm done with this. Look what happened to Marvel. If I had it my way, I'd give them 3 or 4 more films tops, with 2 more mini-series, one being dedicated to Shadow, and perhaps a prequel for a young Robotnik. But before the full conclusion, I'd like to see a return to Sonic's world. And not in just the final movie either. At least 1 movie for the return, and 1 set entirely on Mobius, or the Land of the Sky, or Planet Freedom, or whatever they want to call it. Sonic 3 proves we're that much closer to having a Sonic film with minimal human interaction, and we could take the characters beyond the stars. So the next logical step would be an off-world adventure. Through time and space even? Gonna bring up the prequel comics again, but specifically in Tails and Knuckles' stories, they show Sonic's species to be fairly advanced, and the universe is vast. Between the two, we get a return to South Island, we see Marble Zone, Mystic Ruins, Hilltop Zone, even Casino Nights, with a gladiator pit for some strange reason. I don't know. Movie 4 could very well be the bridge towards the movies becoming completely animated. I mean, look what Paramount was able to do with Transformers 1. Oh, I guess none of you did. But transitioning to animation completely would sadly mean we say goodbye to the Wachowskis and the rest of the human characters. And really, it would make the most narrative sense. Remember, this Sonic started out as an inexperienced fish out of water. He had to grow and evolve into the hero we know him as from the game, so having to bid his Earth parents farewell to face galactic threats would be a bittersweet development, but I'm sure it's something we'd all like to see happen. But you definitely could keep them all on as voices, I'm just saying. I think Adam Pally would make a great Big the Cat, and if James Marsden were so bold as to use his Lil Tom voice for Charmy the Bee, I wouldn't be mad at it. But hey, wherever Paramount, Sega, and Jeff decide to take these movies, I'll be there. So long as these movies keep going bigger, developing the universe and these characters, I'll be there. And when the inevitable controversy arises over live-action Rouge's design, I'll be there. Just know, it shouldn't be hard to find a nice middle ground with her original look. Tyson and Jeff, hit me up. But that brings me to the end of my silly little fanboy ramblings. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you. If you want to see more movie discussions or Sonic movie discussions, or both, consider subscribing. Please like the video, share it with your friends, and stick around for more cool things to come. Until we meet again, friend.